Ross has got his new microphone. Look at his new mic. You can see his whole chest and everything.
You can see the microphone?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Just a little bit. There's nothing wrong with being able to see the microphone.
Just the tip?
There's nothing wrong with being able to see the microphone.
Why are we not recording?
I am recording.
Oh, good. All right.
This is the Tapped In Podcast, the podcast for beverage distributors that want to empower their sales team to drive business results. Listen up and welcome back to another episode of the Tapped In Sales Podcast, your podcast for beer distributors by beer distributors. We're back here with Moneyball Ross and Magic Mike. On the road, Mike. He was on the road one more week. You were on the road all week, Mike, out west, weren't you?
I was, man. Yeah. Beautiful country out there.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. It is beautiful country. So what'd you learn? What'd you see? Did you see or learn anything cool?
I saw a lot of stuff. I drove a lot. I flew into Sacramento, then drove up to Redding, which was 2.5 hours, hung out there for a day and a half, and then drove through the mountains to another part in Northern California, and then down to Reno, then from Reno across the desert to Elko, Nevada, and then from there all the way to Salt Lake City. So it was a heck of a trip. I got to see a lot of really cool stuff. About 1,000 miles on the rental car. So I had some good windshield time, but had to stop and take pictures along the way too.
Love it. And you got to hang out in Utah with some of their crazy laws for a hot minute too, didn't you?
I did. That was my first experience in Utah, going out to what I would call a restaurant. There it's called a bar. So if anybody wants to really just go down a rabbit hole of crazy liquor laws, because we all like to do that, go to OpenAI, tell OpenAI that you work in the beer industry and tell me all about Utah's alcohol laws. And you can spend hours just reading some of the crazy laws in that state. And I know we always made fun of Michigan, thinking that Michigan was some of the craziest, but that has nothing on Utah.
Well, some of the stuff in Utah is, making friends is our business. Pissing people off is our specialty. Yeah. Utah was trying to pass legislation a few years ago to drunk driving at 0.5, where most of the country's at 0.8. So the American Beverage Institute, in the world of pissing people off, said too impaired to drive, you shouldn't be over 65 in driving. That's like driving at 0.5. And then they listed, these are all of the legislators at the time that were 65 or older.
Oh, beautiful. Good move. That's a good move.
So this is a little bit down the legislative rabbit hole of some of the dumb things in which I have in my brain.
Oh, man. Yeah. You guys both have too much time on your hands.
Well, it got me because I'm sitting at a sports bar. It was a really nice sports bar, something that we would all take our kids to. Without Bud, you take Jetta there, but you would take your kids there for sure. Have dinner and a beer and go on about your merry way. Well, I got carded at the door, and there was a bouncer at the door carding everybody, and you had to be 21. So that's kind of what sparked it. And then it just went downhill from there, and all the different laws, and everything on tap has to be under 5% ABV, no double shots. Crazy stuff. So yeah, if you're bored, research that.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I mean, I enjoy the 5% beers or the 5% IPAs at the airport in Salt Lake City. I mean, it's nice. It's like get a full flavored IPA for 5% alcohol. I can kind of just drink those for an hour or two and be okay.
Yeah,
cruising along. So one other fun thing on that point, Sarah was hanging out with a friend who's from the UK. And she was over here in the U.S. at Disney, and they went to Disney together. At the Mexican Pavilion in Epcot, they carded. They were like, "Hey, we need your ID." And of course, the woman from the UK is like, "I don't have a driver's license. All I have is my passport, and I'm not going to walk around with my passport in Disney all day. Like, I'm in my mid-30s. I've been able to drink since I was 18. Like, nobody's carded me for a decade plus, or now I'm almost a decade and a half. Why would I carry that?" So then they refused to serve her. And Sarah walks up and says, "I'll take 2 3-layer margaritas." And they were like, "Nope, you're not getting served either."
Well, the good news about Epcot is if you don't like Mexico, there's plenty of other countries you can visit.
They just went on to the next place.
There you
Yes.
go. Skip
Went on to
Mexico.
the next place.
Those are strong margaritas there. So yeah, it's probably good to skip that one.
I think they actually went. So they were at the one that we didn't see each other at, Ross. They were at the one across the way, and they went to the place that we were at. Got the same like silver margaritas. It got served just fine, and
Yeah.
sat down and had a margarita and everything. So, I told her go to Canada. They feel bad for you. They serve you no matter what, for sure.
Well,
So
we'll see how that lasts.
I know. So diving into the episode today, this is a listener question about growing versus reducing the number of suppliers. So this is the number of supplier partners that we're working with. And this is something that, we thought we'd try to tackle as, the podcast genius that we are, and see how far we could get with this. Some of the things that are on my mind is like access to new categories. Are you protecting against supplier consolidation? Are you just increasing your sales opportunity? Should we be thinking about getting outside of our four walls of beverage and into salty snacks and other things in that nature that would go onto the truck, but also into other categories like, should I be thinking about getting into wine? Should I be thinking about into spirits or THC and Delta 9s and all that stuff? So let's start with access to new categories. Mikey, when you're thinking about adding or removing suppliers, from your position of trying to manage this as a team lead and an SEC and a sales analyst, we added and reduced at a wholesaler we ran. Ross has probably had the same experience. Why don't you kick us off with your thoughts, my man?
Yeah, especially in the operational side too, because I mean, if you're getting a truck there and you have a truck there, and you have room for other products, why not? Right? Just added value, added profitability on the truck, as long as you're delivering profits with the cases, not just cases without the profits, right? But yeah, exploring every single piece that's out there. We have clients that are, like you said, delivering pretzels. The RTDs and non-alc right now are some of the hottest trends. So of course, jumping on board with new suppliers in those two categories and just watching the trends of what's emerging, what's hot, and where else can I grab some incremental profits to throw on my truck while I'm already there. That's not going to cost me an arm and a leg or overfill my truck. So yeah, so many different avenues to go down. And even when we talk about the NA world too now, where to most beer distributors, NA always just meant energy drinks, right? And NA, what's your NA portfolio look? Well, I have these energy drinks. Now, I mean, it's everything from juice to protein shakes to carbonated water, and it's everything. So we're really looking outside of those four walls of NA was just energy drinks or non-alcoholic beer, now to a total NA portfolio where we do see a lot more opportunities.
100% right. And NA beer too, as NA beer continues to grow, like that is another category that is huge in the UK and over in Europe. And those are things that you're a beer distributor and presented with an opportunity to add an NA brand. I think it's an auto yes right now.
Yeah.
The category is growing so fast. Just, you don't know how it's going to shake out. It's a yes, move on. Ross, how about you, my man?
Well, it's time. I'll bring in I'll be Eeyore for a minute here and bring in like the bad stuff, and then I think we can pivot towards good stuff. But I think it's important to zoom out and talk about how we got here. We had that huge burst of SKU proliferation, and we kind of talked about it a little bit last week how the world's changed. We had a multitude of additional suppliers, and a exponential move in SKU count. What's happened, I think, over the last 12 to 24 months, and I think this trend is continuing and probably will continue into the summer, is that we're seeing what I call the doom loop. And what that is as the market starts to compress, what we get is a reduction in sales by SKU, and we haven't reduced SKUs. And this puts financial pressure both on the distributor side and also the supplier side. On the distributor side, that usually manifests itself in out of code, right? And on the supplier side, it causes a supply chain and margin compression. In other words, the distributor orders are getting lighter. That means more cost per case to deliver. And furthermore, these orders are becoming less frequent, which again reinforces the out of code problem and then further reinforces the reduction in orders. So suppliers, looking at their financials may look at it and say, well, shoot, I need to enforce minimums and I need to get smart about these orders in terms of frequency, which again then leads to more and more out of stocks, which further reinforces the doom loop because now our sales reps thinking at their portfolio and saying, okay, I've got 40 IPAs to choose from. Odds are these 5 are going to be out of stock. So I'm going to replace them out with the ones I know are going to be in stock, even though they might be superior products and the consumer might be looking for them. So continuing through this doom loop, now we get less orders, more out of stocks. So where we're heading or where we've come to is a place where I think it's putting a heck of a lot of pressure on those small and regional, specifically the larger regional suppliers. And I think that you may have the best product in the world, you may have the best marketing in the world, but you can't escape this loop. And I think as distributors, we need to be honest with our suppliers. And as suppliers, we need to come to the table with something more than just, hey, I've got marketing dollars. Hey, I've got this great, marketing campaign I got going on. And my product is got the most amazing, innovative, whatever going on with it. So I think that it's important for us to recognize, I don't know who wrote that question or what the motivation was, but I think we're all looking at the same thing, whether you're a supplier or distributor, and wondering, how do we sustain this level of SKU proliferation when the pie is shrinking?
Yeah. You're 100% right. And bring genuine innovation. I don't need another damn tea.
Yeah.
For the conversation from a year or two ago, it's like you go through all, and distributors are in such a unique position because we have so many different supplier partners we do business with now. And I want to share my screen and kind of walk the group through this. So if you're listening, you won't be able to see this, but I'm going to share two things. I kind of broke these up. On the left are the data from the distributor productivity report that MEWA puts together from 2013. So we've got about 21 beer suppliers and 2 wine suppliers with an average of being between 12 and 33 and 0 to 11, depending on the number of suppliers. On the right over here, this is one of the later ones from 2022. We can see on average, we've got beer now is up to 21. We've got energy and soda, and we've really kind of got more granular with now look, the average of being wine is 13. So total of 67 different suppliers going from basically 23 to 67 in roughly a decade in terms of the number of suppliers we're doing business with. So that's pretty incredible. And if we take a step further and look as a percentage of brands, you can see that again, that same growth here between all the different types of brands, between craft, import, all other on the left. And then we got a little bit more narrowed down detail here on the right. But look at 360 or 56 craft brands. That's incredible.
I mean, look at the wine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wine is a bigger percentage of business than total SKUs. How did that happen? How did we get to that world? Wine's cool again. It doesn't go out of code, and it's got less SKUs.
I don't know where to put all that Merlot.
Or the Clou de Boo.
Right next to the Chardonnay.
These are actual terms that we've heard from reps,
and or from Russ.
Yeah,
so this is
that was our clue.
So that was an operations team member on one of the.
That was an Atlas operational team member. So one of the bright ideas Bud had was, let's bring in all these new SKUs on craft and on beer, and also we'll get after the wine too. And I knew we were in trouble on day one when Russ comes wandering into my office and says, well, Bud, where you want me to put the Merlot? I said, Russ, man, you put it right next to the Chardonnay.
Yeah.
And I knew we had a problem on our hands right there. This was our first order of product, and we were like, we're way out of our depth. But that brings up to another good point. Like the number of brand managers, like that is a new thing that has grown up in terms of the capacity or looking at the staffing inside of our organization to manage that many different SKUs, that many different suppliers. There's a whole new layer of middle management around brand management. And Ross, the questions that we also need to start asking ourselves, because you put on your CFO hat and on the finance side, like, what is the contribution margin for all of this additional complexity, not just from the delivery side, but from the administrative side as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's when everything was growing, we were in good shape. Now that we're declining, you can take our cost per case basis, we can stretch it out and say, okay, maybe on average it's $5 a case. And there's two ways we can look at that and say, hey, anything less than $5 a case in GP. But we got to look at the other side of any cost equation, which is, yeah, something may generate $6.50 a case, but the cost is watered down by how much out of code we have across that brand family, right? And that could be upwards of 20, 30 cents a case, which may obliterate your margin differential, right? So the other thing too is from a cost perspective, now we're breaking it down, putting it in flow racks. Obviously receiving that truck is significantly more costly if every single thing is wrapped into multiple layers. We're having to break it apart to put it in bins. So I think it's not fair from a cost accounting perspective to look at it and say simply, hey, this thing generates $6.50 per case, therefore it's great. And furthermore, you may have 10, 20 analogous brands in your portfolio that do volume at that same price point and in that same price product category. And, but I think you said something great, which was, as distributors, we're in a unique position. And I think we need to remember the advantages of that. There's challenges with that unique position that we talked about last week, and there's advantages. The advantage is we are the route to market. And, we're not here to, this is a really bad thing to say, but, we're not necessarily in the market to make sure all of our suppliers are successful. We want to help them be successful. And I think we need to think about that too, which is we need to be partners in the profitability and making sure that we're incentivized both as a distributor and as a sales force to put your product first. And that's not just marketing. That's not just the way it looks. That's not just where it's positioned, but it's also, what our laid in cost looks like and what our, price on the shelf looks like and what, the end margin to the distributor is.
Suppliers think that we pick winners and losers as distributors, and we don't pick winners and losers. The market ultimately picks winners and losers. And there is an infamy, a number of examples of that. New Belgium, 1554. That was the one that the founders of New Belgium, I think it was Jeff. What's the husband's name? Is it Jeff or Jim?
Jeff.
I think it's Jeff and Kim, two founders. They thought that 1554 would be the machine. You can't even find 1554 outside of Colorado, basically. Like, it doesn't exist. The market chose fat tire. And now that has even fallen by the wayside. And now the market has chosen Voodoo Ranger.
Yeah.
And these are things that distributors don't select. We don't pick winners and losers. We put the product on the shelf. Our objective is to partner with our suppliers, be a route to market, make the route to market as efficiently as possible, and make it as outcome driven as possible for the suppliers. And then the market does the rest.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit, but I think we distributors do to some degree pick losers.
How?
Well, think about this. I mean, if I'm not going to place something that I think is going to be out of stock.
Well, those are our smart wholesalers.
Well, I mean, out of stocks don't look good, and somebody's going to grab my space. So even if I'm not compensating my sales team on profitability or even, commission volume, I don't want out of stocks because somebody's going to grab my space. So you may be right. On a macro basis, that's not something we decided. It's a great beer. I love that beer. I drink that beer.
It's awesome.
It's a fantastic beer. I don't understand why it's not everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the market chose Voodoo Ranger. I don't drink with the Voodoo Ranger as much or at all. But
you don't drink the pineapple IPA?
But 1554 was a great beer. So we don't, on a macro basis, choose the market. But we certainly, on a micro basis, are making decisions every single day that are going to lead to losers. And quite frankly, we are going to pick winners too. I mean, we're going to reinforce what's working. So we may smell out a macro trend faster if we're a smart sales rep. right? All of a sudden, we're going to see, wow, that Voodoo Ranger is turning fast and it's moving. So maybe I should move its positioning,
Mm-hmm.
which further reinforces the speed. I'm like, well, shoot, this thing's really going. So let's put it in my other accounts. So I would argue that yes, one account in the middle of the country or one distributor in the middle of the Midwest isn't going to make 1554 the next great thing.
No,
But
but
I think
the
on a micro
trends,
basis, we do.
right? Exactly. And you
And we
said
can
it.
build brands. I don't want to take away from us being able to build brands, because that is something that we do. We're just not the judge and jury on how those brands play out. But to that point, to build on that for you, Mike, the follow-up question is, from a sales position, how do suppliers start to be smarter or get involved with distributors to make more influential decisions at the route to market level that doesn't include a super complex incentive
Yeah.
that is delivered late? I mean, we've been talking to a client this month. The supplier still hasn't delivered the incentive they want tracked for April. Like, that doesn't make any sense to anybody. Why would we even try to track? Like, it's not going to deliver any knowledge.
Right.
It's just going to deliver payouts to the reps for no rhyme or reason at all.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's typically, I mean, with our larger suppliers, usually we always have that laid out ahead of time. But so I'll talk about the smaller suppliers. And I think really, really spending some time in the market, right? Listening to the reps. The reps are the front line. They're there. They're seeing these trends emerge well before scan data does. If you're waiting for scan data and then following the market, you're already behind, right? Being in the retail accounts every single day, different retail accounts in different markets, tells you where the market's heading. By saying, hey, I have to have this product in this store, even though it's the wrong product, just because my supplier said it, I only have space for one SKU and that's it. I already know I'm going to lose because I know that's not where this particular store, even this route or this market, where it's heading. I know what's on fire. I know what I need to have. They have it. I can't slide it in, right? So having the suppliers really be in the market with the reps and just getting that feed, or even without the reps, just going into the market and talking with retail accounts gets that feedback, right? And they need to have innovation on their side, right? I mean, if you're standing still, you're already losing. Basically, you need to be ready to innovate, and you need to be able to pivot, especially if you're in the craft industry right now. And I don't think you can't incentivize and display your way out of the trends that's going on right now. You can't
No.
display your way out of where craft beer is heading, and by getting more displays and more of this, you really need to be on your toes. You need to follow the market of what's going on. And like I said, I mean, if you're not doing that, then that's a sure sign you're just standing still and you're not going to win. So at that point, when we've had some, and this kind of takes us back to the beginning, when we looked at our portfolio and managed our portfolio, which we did on an annual basis, to make sure that we had the right products. Were we missing anything? Something else we needed to go out of? And also, were the products that were in our warehouse that we were still delivering, are they still profitable? Or are we just delivering cases and not profits? And when you start looking at some of those suppliers and you look at their overall plan, right? Do they align with our overall plan? Are they innovative? Are they listening to the market? Or are they just saying, nope, we still have a lot of growth within our core brands and we're just sticking with our core. We're going to keep beating it into the market until it's dead. Those are some of the decisions that you really make when you're optimizing your portfolio too.
I mean, I would say that have the conversation with the supplier before you cut them. Give them a chance.
Yeah, of
Like
course.
sit down and say, this is where we're heading. And if we're on this, again, I'm gonna bring it back. If we're on this doom loop, this is where this is going to end up.
Yeah.
So, what can we do that makes sense? Of course, me sitting and putting my normal hat back on would say, well, let's get you $2 a case more margin than the nearest analogous product, and let's rip. I'll fill those trucks back up again. I'll fill the shelves back up again, and because you'll be domination in my portfolio in terms of marginal profitability. That's just me, but there are other ways here that we could probably explore. But I think you owe it to the supplier to have the honest conversation of where things are heading versus letting it go to a place where you've got old beer in the market, you've got old beer coming back, and the supplier is just getting crushed on logistics costs.
Yeah. We did a major pruning event at Atlas, and I'm just kind of like walk everybody through the story of what we did there. So this was probably in the mid what do you think, Mikey? 2013,
It was,
2014, somewhere in
yeah.
there. We had overblown our portfolio considerably. And we came to the conclusion as a leadership team that we should be starting to think about ourselves as talent agents. And we need to sell what's hot and what's working. And we need to prune what we see no longer as a future or no longer as an opportunity and in the long term. And what we did was we went through and pruned a considerable amount of our portfolio that was kind of wild and crazy from a total gross profit standpoint. It was a reasonable percentage of our book's gross profit, but we had a feeling that if we had a narrowed focus and that if we sold these brands at the peak, which Crispin is one of the best ones, one of the best deals I've ever done. If anybody ever sees me at a conference and wants to hear about the Crispin deal I cut, I am happy to share it with you. I won't publicly do it on podcast, but that was an incredible deal we cut for that brand. And it made sense, and we got refocused, and we replaced and added every single dollar we pruned off through refocusing the portfolio.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was about the time, that moment in history, right? When we look back to when the supplier distributor relationships really shifted, as far as, prior to that time, any supplier that was out there that wanted us to distribute it, we're like, oh, hell yeah, we're all in. We'll grow your brands. Give me everything. What do you have? Perfect. We'll take it all. We'll take you to the moon and back. And about that time is when we really started going, all right, are we brand collectors or are we brand builders? And if we're brand collectors, just keep saying yes to everything under the sun. If we're brand builders, we really need to narrow this focus down. It's getting overwhelming for the reps. Where is their focus when we have so many suppliers with the same styles of beer? Because there weren't really that many styles of beer. 2013, yeah, everybody had a little chocolate stout and whatever. But overall, and you think about it now, even coming into what's hot, the RTD category. When the RTD category went absolutely bonkers, there was so many RTDs, and what emerged? A handful of winners. Right, we're still seeing a couple kind of get up there, but still a handful of winners out of, tens, 20s, 30, 50 different brands that were in that category. So that's when you really start to narrow your focus down too. It's like, all right, am I chasing this trend and grabbing everything under the sun, or am I focused on the winner and I'm taking that winner to the moon? Right.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, having a SKU rationalization audit process that's either annual or every other year is not a bad idea. I mean, it's similar to what it was like Goldman Sachs does, where they split off a certain percentage of the team every year.
The annual culling.
The annual culling. That's not a bad option with your SKUs too. You take your velocity times your profit, and you rank it, and you sit down and you make some decisions. It's not. I mean, it's not. It's not a terribly pleasant exercise, but it helps institutionalize it, bring everybody in the same room, make it a process, and make sure everybody's on the same page. So it's not one person sitting in the finance desk making the decision. It's not just a couple brand managers making the decision. It's a decision that's made as a group that involves all parties, and everybody's got a few chips they can play on the table to say, no, we got to keep that one. So I think it's a better way to go about it than haphazardly cutting SKUs or not reordering or letting the purchasing department make the decision. But having a institutionalized SKU rationalization process is not a bad idea.
That's a good like go do. Institutionalizing a process when it happens, more than likely should probably be happening in Q1 into Q2, somewhere in there. So then you're culling your portfolio at the peak selling period and you're getting rid of these SKUs that are not performing for you through the summertime. I know we fell into this trap a couple of times where we did it in Q4 and now we're stuck with these things.
Yeah.
For a while. So we started to shift and would highly recommend, if you're not doing it like this, if you're doing it annually, you shift it around to where it's in Q1, latter part of Q1, first part of Q2. So that March, April time period. Probably also going to get your chain mandates, adds and deletes around the same time.
Yeah.
It'd be a perfect time to align to that calendar. And then another great process is you can almost create a systematic approach like jury selection. You have so many vetoes. If you have so many brand managers, you have so many vetoes. And when you run out of your vetoes, you're done.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have it. You can have your sacred cows, or you can have the few that you really want to do a favor for, that you truly believe in. But if they don't meet a volume and profit hurdle rate, and the Ross, that's another good point. It should be looked at in volume times profit as well. And if you can interlace and you have the detail down to individual SKUs around returns and the cost of finished product loss, that's another opportunity to bring in as well. Because you will probably find weird things where, like, if we looked at it by volume only, we probably wouldn't cut this SKU.
Mm-hmm.
But if we looked at it by volume times profit and subtracted off finished product loss cost, it's definitely something we should cut. And it's a more elaborate, more sophisticated review of how your SKU proliferation cut meeting should go.
I think if you layer in, that's really smart, but I think if you layer in the finished product loss, I think you're going to see some terrifying results. I think you're going to see some negatives.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And I mean, when we look at GP per CE with our clients, because we let math do the math, we see those negatives, and you can see those negative returns over a period of time, and you can get serious about, like, this is just an underperforming SKU at all. Any kind of opinions around the number of SKUs / number of suppliers that you think any one operator can manage or handle at any given time?
I don't personally think that there is a number, an overall set number. It's going to be unique for each individual operation, as far as manpower, operationally, and what they feel comfortable handling. That's not going to dilute the focus of their sales reps. I mean, and that's the ultimate. Yeah. You have to look at the trends. Do we have something in every emerging trend? Right? Are we missing something in our portfolio? And then back to what you just said, looking through and pulling what's not working, what are we losing money on or barely breaking even on, and why are we still carrying it?
Should we be thinking about, as an industry, I have lots of opinions and viewpoints around our route to market is incredibly valuable. Where we go, how often we go, and the capability of our sales team is really, really unique. We're not a logistics company where we just drop things off. We're not a full-fledged sales team where you got to figure out your own logistics. We're that hybrid between the two. And does it make sense to really look at non-beverage categories now? We've got clients selling pretzels, popcorn, barbecue sauce, gummies, not THC-centric gummies either, like regular just fruity snacks and stuff like that. Is that something that we would suggest clients and prospects continue to look at and research? Or is that too far out of our area of expertise and it's a science experiment waiting to go bad?
I have a really short answer. Why not? Right? If it's going to put some profit on our trucks, well, we're already there, with not a whole lot of overhead with operational costs or overfilling our trucks, then why not? We're already there. I mean, we see some suppliers making a really, really big jump right now with distributors. And you can't help but think that it is the relationships and the service level that's driving some of those decisions. So any kind of brand outside of the beverage category would love to have us servicing their accounts, in my opinion. And why not, if it's going to put some extra profits on the trucks?
I mean, my knee-jerk reaction was, I don't really know. And my second thought was, we just need to make sure, if it was me, I would just be making sure it doesn't cannibalize my core profitability. And again, that's velocity times profitability. Like, I'm not going to bring in something just because it has $20 a case in profitability and I move 4 cases and I have to bring everybody in for a sales meeting and all that other stuff, right? Conversely, you don't want to bring in something that's 50 cents a case and completely decimate your operational, cost accounting structure, right? You're filling up space on a truck, great, but at 50 cents a case, I mean, you could run yourself in the ground pretty quick. I think it's nuanced. I think the right products, the right extensions make sense. But again, it's hard for me to make blanket statement. I think it's very much case by case here.
It's a good homework assignment, Ross, is like, go back and look at the cost of delivering all that water that some of these
Yeah.
distributors are selling at 50 or a buck a case. And does it make your sales numbers in terms of a volume report feel good? And does it make your profit number feel good? And because what Ross is picking at is one of the crazy things that I've always talked about is that I would rather sell one case a year for whatever GP budget I have over selling triple or quadruple the number of cases for that same GP budget, because I will get eaten alive operating one of these wholesalers through the operational costs of the business by doubling the fleet, adding new drivers, all of this logistics headache, then sizable or growing the warehouse space for the same profitability. It's creating activity for activity's sake. It is not driving money to the bottom line
Because
and making a result.
well, what's our strength in our industry is also our weakness, right? So you said it. We're very much in all these accounts. We service them far more than other people do. We have relationships with the purchasers, but we're also not the cheapest route to market. Right? We're a more expensive route to market. We're less efficient because we've decided to be. And it's based on the history of our, 3-tier industry. So that provides unique challenges to when thinking about, and advantages when talking to these alternative suppliers. Because we do have the ability to, again, I think we do have the ability to some degree build brands on a micro basis. And I think suppliers that value that are going to come to that. If you just want the cheapest conduit to market, you don't care, then maybe we're not the best fit.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that play out on both sides at scale. We've seen us build brands as a la Celsius, Bang, even though RIP Bang, but maybe Bang 2.0 is back. We have an AI Energy. We haven't seen a whole lot of that yet. Monster, those are all, even Red Bull for a large in part. We've built an incredible machine with Red Bull to the point where Red Bull has said, you know what, this is big enough now. We'll terminate you as a wholesaler and start to run our own operation. It's a Red Bull only operation or a company owned wholesaler.
We talk about our own experience with Good to Grow.
Oh, yes.
Distributors that we've interfaced with and what's happened with Good to Grow.
Yes. So as a good example, where Good to Grow has come in, where it's incredibly accretive, it's $20 a case in GP per CE. And this is a good lead into a future episode is like, well, should I care about GP per CE? Should I care about margin percentage? Should I care about raw dollars per box? And to me, at the frontline sales rep, it's all about GP per CE. That's where we want to look at the quotient or the ratio or the KPI. And when you have something like Good to Grow that is incredibly accretive, you can just add it to the account, add it to the store. And as it moves, it will drive numbers for you. Same thing with Fireball Malt for our wholesalers that are selling Fireball Malt. I remember telling my dad, like, Fireball Malt will be our third largest supplier by GP. And he's used to looking at things by volume. And he's like, no, it won't. Not even close. I'm like, yes, it will, bro. At $21 a case, it definitely will. And we don't have to sell that many cases. And we sold like 1,000 cases of CE's worth of Fireball Malt. It went to the moon. And it was just like, yeah, next question.
You're proving my point. So our 3-tier system, we do have the ability to take certain products and certain categories and really drive them and grow them. Now, I don't have the data to back it up. I don't know what Good to Grow's data looks like on their side, but where we've seen Good to Grow and the distributors are aligned with how we think, we've seen Good to Grow over index. And you mentioned another one, Fireball. So I think those are great examples of products that they're way better off going the 3-tier route to market because we do have some ability to move. Again, I don't think we're the most efficient route to market, but I certainly think we have advantages, and there it is.
If you want to be serviced, we're incredibly efficient. If you don't need the service or don't feel like you want the service, or the Celsius, they're going to sell to Pepsi and then be disgruntled about the level of service they get and sales go flat. Like if we look at them as a case study and we drive into it more, we probably look at it and say, maybe you're better off with beer as a service oriented distributor versus a utility that is literally a logistics company and doesn't really give a shit about how your brands play out at the end of the day. They just want to fill the trucks up.
I mean, I think we've seen this story play out a few times. Going way back machine. Let's go back to Monster.
Yeah.
Celsius, We can look at Ghost. I mean, these things I think did very well because of the 3-tier system.
Absolutely.
And we'll see them again.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it goes into, if you think about Good to Grow too, most beverage distributors or beer distributors, that's their only brand in that category. So they're not cannibalizing anything, right? It's pure opportunity for the reps to get into that space. And there's a lot more opportunity there, in my opinion. And if I was a supplier like Good to Grow, I mean, it's a no-brainer to go with a beer distributor.
And we want to see that return on effort. So the takeaway for distributors and suppliers is, how are you tweaking the sales team's return on effort to want to build that brand?
Yep.
Because if we're looking at a volumetric centric way, there's things that will get lost in the shuffle. And if we're looking at revenue dollars exclusively, there are things that will get lost in the shuffle there. And that's why we preach the volume times profit method, because it brings to life a lot of more of these nuanced opportunities, and we get new behaviors out of the sales team to help grow brands, add placements, and drive the results that you're looking for. And as you do all of this, you can massage the portfolio around it. I mean, how many number of times have we seen clients reduce and add and reduce and add and reduce and add, all through this new lens of thinking through things and continuing to evolve the portfolio year after year after year? Because that's what you're going to have to continue to do. The big takeaway is you have to continue to evolve your portfolio every single year.
And I like to bring it back. I love what Mike said. You just got to stay dynamic and quick and responsive. And, if you're waiting for the macro trends to be released and reported on, you're probably behind the 8 ball. Whether you're a sales team in the field or whether you're a supplier, you don't want to be chasing the trend. Mm-hmm. You want to be at the front end of it.
Let's tease a future episode with a kind of a leading question around looking at the business that has taken on in terms of adding suppliers through the liquor channel, and that the contracts that many wholesalers have drafted are centered around delivery modeled. They're flat standard case costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is a slippery slope in Bud's mind around, we would never tolerate one of the largest suppliers to come in and say, we're just going to shift your profitability model to a delivered case model. But we are opening ourselves to that scrutiny by taking a input of extra volume or GP dollars, which I understand. It's a great deal. It's a great program and a great platform. It makes total sense. The cautionary tale is that, does this open us up long-term to, this is the new way that we want to be engaged as a network, the new way that suppliers want to engage with us? Or is it as a giant slippery slope that makes no sense and we need to start to put the toothpaste in the tube as fast as possible?
I think that's a really interesting question, Bud. And I could probably get myself in trouble talking about that.
Well, we'll tee it up and leave it there as something to chew on for a future episode, because that really leads into one of the things that we were talking about on the Slack as we were getting prepped for today's, around when you're looking at the profitability and how your relationship works with the suppliers and how you want to curate what portfolio you want to go to market with. So, any other thoughts, boys, as we wind it down?
Not on that topic, no. Just shout out to Bubba and Nick out in Northern California for listening to the pod. A couple sales reps out there that listen to us, so shout out to them. Thanks, boys, for listening to us knuckleheads.
Knuckleheads. Gotta love it. You met some fans, Mikey?
Met some fans. Yep. That's always good.
Good stuff. That's awesome. Well,
if you were, start sending you out there with some swag.
Yeah,
I know.
We need hats. I'll wear a hat.
We need hats.
Yep.
To that point, wow, I have an idea for some swag, actually.
And for the record, we've historically been very anti-swag, so this is quite the adjustment.
This is quite the adjustment. But for those of us listeners who were listening last week, we were able to learn more about an embarrassing lotion story from Mikey.
That's how I met Bubba. When Bubba got out of the car, that episode was just released that morning. I mean, this is 10 o'clock in the morning when I meet up with Bubba, and he gets out of the car and he goes, Mikey, I'm so sorry. I should have brought you some more travel lotion, buddy.
I was pitched this idea by a client of ours to saying, hey, maybe we should get Mikey some lotion. And we had created some lotion.
Oh my God, look at that. Everybody needs to head to the YouTube right now and watch this. Look at this.
Oh my gosh. We are going to this. You know what? We were just talking about additional products that we could bring into the distributor that are just incremental profitability and not something you normally sell. This lotion could be fantastic for any beverage distributor that wants to get involved right now. We're signing distribution agreements, right?
Yeah.
Incredibly accretive. Profitability is incredible.
What's the GP per case on this stuff?
It's going to be very healthy. Like every supplier, just like every supplier who hasn't set their pricing yet, and that's the question you asked. It's going to be great. It's going to be so healthy. It's going to be the best.
My skin feels moisturized just looking at that label. I love it.
That's right. And look at this, Mikey. They specifically said, Rodney specifically said it needs to be 750.
750.
Clearly,
yep. No, I like it. That's. Can I get on an airplane with that though? Is there a travel?
I love it. We can get real efficient with 9-liter cases. That way, any wine distributor fits in perfectly.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yep. I love it.
You can even do a split case charge and make an extra $1 a bottle.
Ooh, even better. Now you're talking.
Oh man, I love it. That's great.
I love it. Well, you guys rock. If you're listening out there and you're enjoying what we're doing and you have a question, feel free to email us at info@vxptech.com. That's info, you know how to spell info, at vxptech.com. If you're also enjoying this, please like, subscribe, review, share with a friend, and we appreciate you for listening to us. We'll be back next week with more insights and more ideas. We may even tackle the topic of discussion that we teased out today. So, boys, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening, everybody. Cheers.
Cheers.